Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Open your eyes slowly. What shall we talk about this morning?
What are the mechanics of a child's mind?
I wasn't very question you asked me. We persuaded. Oh, good. Right. What are the mechanics or the psychology of a child's mind? So little has been known about it by psychologists and psychiatrists because their method of treatment lies mostly in response. Now, a little child not being able to speak could never tell the psychologist what his or her problems are, because, to say again, they are dependent upon what you have to say. And according to what you have to say, they guide you by trying to probe deeper into your mind. Now, with a child lacking that response, what can be done? And so little is understood about the mind. Where does the mind come from? How does the child have a mind? And how does it develop? Where does perception begin? And the various conceptions it is subjected to, and how are they received? Fine. A child's mind starts at the moment of inception. As soon as the sperm penetrates the ovum, the mind is there already. Because the togetherness of the ovum and the sperm already contains the mind, which is universal. For there is only one mind. There being only one mind, the child, without having its brain cells developed in the embryo stage, is not cognizant of the workings of the mind, although it is there. Now, as the child develops in the embryo, and as brain cells start forming, then the child becomes slightly aware of the warmth of the womb. It becomes aware of the mother. When the fetus reaches about 7 months, then certain amount of perception takes place. So it is very important for pregnant women that when it comes to about 7 months of pregnancy, that the mind is filled with good thoughts, holy thoughts, uplifting thoughts, or they create a subconscious impression on the fetus or the unborn child's mind. In the East, we have a system where a ceremony is performed when the woman is 7 months pregnant. It's a holy religious ceremony. Then, after that, she does not stay with the husband. And they're having a matriarchal system. The mother-in-law is the boss. And of course, all the daughters-in-law in the house are on way to work. Well, she would sit back in an armchair. Right. So the reason why the pregnant woman goes to her mother is so that who is there to look after her better than her own mother? Not the mother-in-law. So she's given enough rest, and she would do a lot of reading of religious books, scriptures. She would listen to holy discourses, to spiritual men. So the mind is forever filled with good, positive thoughts, and that has a marked effect on the subconscious mind of the unborn child. So you see, the development of the mind is not after birth only, but even before birth, around about the 7th month of pregnancy, the mind gathers impressions which it cannot consciously express yet, but they are embedded there in the subconscious. So now the child is born. Fine. It goes through certain traumatic experiences, away from the comfort of the mother's womb to the outside world. It is a kind of wrench. Many hospitals, they have changed the system now at many places, where many hospitals would take the child away immediately after birth and would put it in a crib or a baby's cot. And that is so wrong, because the child is used to the mother's warmth and the mother's heartbeat. The mother's heartbeat gives the child a feeling of a particular rhythm, and it is deprived of that rhythm. But now, just about a few years now, they have learned that after birth, the child is given to the mother, and the mother holds the child to her breast, and then the child gets a feeling of that same rhythm. So it does not feel as if it is wrenched away. These are impressions the child gets. Although the child cannot think yet. But these very impressions are the impressions that will guide the child's thinking as it grows up. Now, the most important years of a little child is up to about when it is 3. Up to the age of 3, it is still working on instinct and the impressions gained so far. And those 3 years are the most important years in a person's life. What you have been subjected to, all the impressions you have gathered in the first 3 years of your life, can make you or break you when you grow up. Most mental illnesses do not come about suddenly. They've started there already, before the age of 3. Quarrels in the home are felt by the child, because the child too has consciousness. The consciousness has begun because of the mind beginning at the time of conception. So, if there's a quarrel in the home between mother and father, the child registers all those impressions within itself. Now, when we said that there is only one mind, then where does individuality come from? Individuality comes because of all those impressions. Right. So, during the first 3 years, if a child is ill, and the child cannot tell you what is wrong with him, what do we do? Because of the closeness that the child has developed with the mother, and I do disagree with the idea of having nannies to look after children while the poor mother has to go to work because of circumstances or whatever. But there is an intuitive flow between the child and the mother, although the mother might not recognize it, but there is a flow continually going on. For example, a child is crying and you take the child in your arms and you do that, and the child gets soothed. Do you know why the child gets soothed? Because of the movement of the mother while she was pregnant, naturally has a rhythmic motion in the womb, because the child is encased by water, liquid. So in that liquid it sways. Therefore, little children, because of those impressions, like the swaying movement or the rocking of a crib. You see, now these things go to prove that the child gathers impressions. So, now, the child is ill, so how does the mother know? Should the mother only rely on the child's crying? How much hunger does a child feel? Because it has still not started thinking. It feels very little hunger. Never as much as a more grown-up child. Because the child has been fed in the womb through the umbilical cord, it still has that craving for something to go into it, and not because it is severely hungry. It is a habit formed. We automatically, food is fed into it while still in the womb. Now, because of that habit, when the child is born, after a little while it would want to be fed. Its old habits don't die. Yeah. Now, in the feeding of the child, and while the child is feeding from the mother's breast, they are gaining impressions of sexuality. They start with oral sexuality, and then, of course, they start having the impressions or becoming a little aware of anal sexuality. Therefore, we say, and all the medical fraternity agree, that sex is the strongest desire in a human being. It's the strongest driving force in a human being, because it has started at an age when the child could not even think, but the impressions are laid for its satisfaction. So, from the start, from conception, the child is fed with impressions all the time. So, when you find people sexually perverted, for example, it is because of the impressions it has gained even before the thinking process has started. So those impressions have to express themselves. Now, when the child has the mind, remember it is not only the new impressions that it brings with, it also brings with impressions of past existences. In other words, the child is a totality. When a child is to be molded to the parents, should give it such impressions, not on the thinking level, because a child is more intuitive because it has not started thinking yet. And of course, therefore, more impressionable. The child operates when it moves its arms or legs or cries. It does not cry because of thinking processes. It cries because of the impressions. So now, when a proper rapport has been established between a child and mother, the mother would automatically know the need of a child. The intuitive level is so wonderful and so powerful that the baby could be in the next room, and when the baby wakes up, the mother wakes up. I mean, many of you that are mothers have experienced this. Now, what is this force? It is that intuitive force in the child, and the child waking up would automatically wake up the mother because of that rapport that has been established. Now we're talking of a good mother, that would really look after the child. Right. So, what damages a child when he starts thinking is the thought processes. And schools and grown-ups and parents try to mold the child into certain ways of thinking. In other words, the parents block the natural growth of the child by you do this and you don't do that and you believe this. And of course, when it gets a bit older, it's a bit naughty. You say the bogeyman is coming and take you away in a bag and... Yeah. Now, what are you doing? You're implanting fear in the child. So when it becomes an adult and becomes fearful, who is to blame? The parent. But now the question that we really want to inquire into is how to have total communication with an unthinking child. And that is totally possible. And that depends upon the rapport that the mother could have with the child or the father could have with the child. The child's mind, because of the impressions that are there, the mind is alive. And if we can probe that aliveness in the child, then you can actually speak to the child, and the child will speak with you in a language silent. You've heard of certain people, like say St. Francis, that could speak to animals and others. And it is definitely done. Give me any child, and I will tell you exactly what is going through that child's mind by just looking at it, looking at its eyes. And you can find out and know all those impressions that are in the child's mind. And that is what modern psychology lacks, because they have not developed, psychologists have not developed that ability. Many psychologists that are meditators have come to me especially Because they're very interested in child psychology, how to communicate. And you cannot communicate with the child with your conscious mind, because your conscious mind is prejudiced. It has biases. But you can communicate with the child at a finer level of the mind. And that same level you use to communicate with animals. For example, many homes I visit, and it's a common experience to my host or hostess, where there are a few animals in the home, pets, and be a dozen people sitting. And I look at the pet, with love in the heart, and the pet will walk up to me instead of to the others. Why? Because that rapport of love is established. Now, if this is so easy with animals, should it not be more easier with humans? The human child. Now, the diseases of a child could be understood better if the therapist, be it a doctor or a psychologist or whatever, could go to a deeper state of his mind and have total non-verbal communication with the child. So, therefore, I said a little while ago that the most important years of the child is until he reaches about 3. It is true that by the age of 1 and 2, and that it starts recognizing things, but that recognition is still not on the thinking level. It is on the impressionistic level, on the level of impressions. Fine. When it comes to colors, why is a little child, say 1-year-old, you put a half a dozen colored objects there, little toys, it will be attracted to red. Why? To red first and not the other. That too is because of certain impressionistic things where the eye, the retina could catch red more powerfully than other colors. Okay. Now, as the child grows older, it is gathering all these impressions one by one by one. You can be angry and the child will feel anger more. You can bluff a grown-up, but you cannot bluff the baby. Yes. You can be angry as hell with someone and yet have a smile in your face. And the grown-up won't know. But not a child. The child feels immediately that a person is angry. And same thing applies to every emotion. Love, for example. The child feels immediately. So, the child has a working mind, impression. It is only after it reaches about the age of 3 that the child gets spoiled. Spoiled in the sense that the wrong things are thrown at the little child all the time. And that is why the environment has such an effect on the child which carries on in his grown-up life. We parents can do a lot for our children. A lot. Not when they're grown up, because then they are in certain set ways already. But when they are from birth to the age of 3. And they would be lasting. They would be lasting and would be carried over in the grown-up lives. Whatever impressions are implanted in that little susceptible mind there, will make that grown up what he will be. My mother and father were very fond of the Hindu epics called the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And they were composed in poetry form. And my father loved reciting the Mahabharata. Fine, it's poetry, but you recite it. Can I give you an example now? Can I think of something? Vaisanapai tuem pergolya sunajanme jairai vistari tujne sabarau ard paro mahimai. That's how it's chanted. And of course, every bit goes in a different melody. Right, a different meter. And this they were doing, well, I was still in my mother's womb, but so sometimes people ask me that you're a very good poet, where did you get it from? I say, I got it from my mother's womb. See. So, the children, little children, even before they can think, pick up these impressions. How many people are there that don't like music? A very rare exception. Everyone loves music. Everyone does. As a matter of fact, Shakespeare has said in one of his poems that never trust a person who does not like a drink or music. Yes. So because you like music, a little child enjoys a lullaby. Not because of things, but because of the impressions that are there. That is why all children like lullaby. I'm bringing out these various points to show you how important it is in those first 3 years for parents to be very, very careful. Even you might quarrel a block away and that child is going to feel it. Like, for example, a little dog, the master's still a few blocks away and it runs to the front door. Thinking the master's coming home. In the same way, the child functions. In animals, we call it at an instinctive level. In humans, we call it an intuitive level. Now, what happens to the mind is this, that the left hemisphere, which the grown-up uses so much in analyzing, and things like that, in thinking, the child does not yet. But the child uses the right hemisphere of the brain, which is through which intuition is brought about. So, if we have grown-up children that are not behaving well, we blame ourselves first. Now, when the child starts using the left hemisphere, the thinking level, the analytical level, that is where all the troubles begin. Because when it starts thinking a bit, it finds so many contradictions in its environment, and it wants to compare it with the impressions that were gained. Now, if wrong impressions were gained during the first 3 years, then the child, if given a choice, will choose something which would be compatible with the impression gained. Good impressions are gained, and when it comes to a choice, the child will choose that which is compatible, the good thing, which is compatible because of the good impressions. Now, we say again and again that is so important that, you see, he says, yes, Ian does. So it is so important in those stages the parents have to be very careful. An unhappy family can never produce a happy child when it grows up. Now, sanskaras plays a big part in it, but sanskaras can be redirected. Because sanskaras too is an energy. And it can be redirected, remolded, so that it could become more conducive to live a happier life. Now, they talk of hereditary values. Hereditary values are true, but it has its limitations. It has its limitations. They believe that certain things come down in your blood when you're born. True in many instances. Let them come down in your blood, but what has that to do with happiness? What has that to do with happiness? A child might inherit a certain disease from a parent because of its past karma, past life, so that is natural. But if the parent could plant the impressions in the child who still does not understand, then that very illness the child will accept in such a way that it does not become unhappy. I think, I don't know if I told you before, that one of the happiest person that I've ever met is a person in a wheelchair. She couldn't walk since she was born maimed, and yet the happiness just bubbles over in her. Yes. So for example, if we have a deformed child, we, even before it starts thinking, can make that child accept its own circumstances. And this is the role that psychology should play. There is something hereditary, yes. You know, there was a pickpocket, and he met a girl who was also a pickpocket. And they thought to themselves that if we should get married and have a child, the child will become a super pickpocket. Fine. So they did get married and the child was born. But the child would just not open its fist. And they were quite worried about it, because how is he going to carry on with his pickpocketing profession if he doesn't open its fist? Right. So they went to a doctor, and the doctor said, look, I can do nothing about this. Let me refer you over to a good psychologist. So they went to the psychologist, and the parents explained what they were, that they are pickpockets, and the child's life would be ruined if it can't open its fist, to become that super pickpocket. So the psychologist was a clever guy. And he looked at the child, heard his story, and then he took out his gold watch and waved it in front of the child's eyes. And waved it in front of the child's eyes. And then slowly the child started opening its fist. And do you know what was found in the child's hand? The midwife's wedding ring. So the reason why I thought this question was of great interest is because many people come to me for counseling about their children. You see. So now, when the child starts thinking, then its environment throws so many wrong thoughts to the child. Starts off at home, with parents not behaving the way they should, and the child starts thinking about that. And then when the child reaches school age, and then a lot of wrong things are thrown into the child's mind, creating anger, creating fear, creating greed, all kinds of things. In school, a child pinches a pencil from another child. It comes home and the parents won't say anything about it. Oh, well, saving it from buying the pencil, saving tuppence. Things are wrong. So naturally, when the child grows up, it would have that larceny and thievery in its blood. A parent came to me with a boy of about 11, I think 11 or 12. Now, in South Africa, in the schools there, you have a period called the free period. And in the free period, the teacher discusses anything they like to the children. This little teacher, I don't think she was more than 19 or 20, a real idiot. Yes. There are many teachers in the world today that would be better off as street sweepers rather than teachers. Yeah. So this teacher, in one of the free periods, was telling the children that if you travel in an aeroplane and a window breaks, she's talking about the pressurization in a plane. When the window breaks, you can get sucked out. And then after you get sucked out, you'll die and all these things, and all seats will get sucked out, and things like that. This poor child, hearing that from the teachers, developed such fear of wind that if it was a windy day, the child wouldn't want to go out, thinking that its neck would be twisted. Oh. They start getting nightmares, remembering what the teacher said. So the mother, the parent, I think it was the mother, it was the mother, came to see me grow the child and talk to the child, explaining these things. And it is so easy to communicate with children. If you know, if you have the love, that's a primary quality. It could be any child. And if you have the love, you can really probe. I mean, at the age of 11, 12, you can really get into the child. Fine, and these are the things I found out. So I says, well, tomorrow morning, what school are you at? I took the address and I went to the school. And I told the mother, meet me there at the school, such and such a time. I went to see the principal and I said, could you call Miss so-and-so, whatever her name was, to the office? So the principal did. So I started talking to this teacher. I said, when you talk about all these various things in your free period, and I gave her some instances, I said, do you know how you're damaging the children? By planting fear into them of that which is not real. How many times has an aeroplane window broken and how many people have been sucked out? I've never heard of one. Yeah. This teacher's brain should have been sucked out. So then she realized, thank God, of her mistake, and she said, sir, I didn't realize this, I didn't know this. And of course, I shall be very careful in future. But now, what I'm trying to point out and illustrate to you is that a child, even when it has started thinking, is subjected to all these things in our sick society. It is said that in America, they worked out the viewing time of a child, and they worked it out to around about 3 hours, three and three-quarter hours a day. And during that time, over a period of a year, the average American child is subjected to 13,000 killings or murders. Isn't that one of the reasons, and of course our newspapers, isn't that one of the reasons why there's so much violence in the world? The best way, now we can't change the TV stations or the newspapers, can we? So the best way is in those 3 years when a child is born, is to plant ideas of nonviolence by treating the child gently, non-violently. All these things are there. We said a while ago that sex is the greatest instinct in human beings, the most powerful one. Right. Now, today you open up newspapers, open up page 3 of the Sun, and you find page 3 or 4. Page 3. I was told about it, yeah. I must really find a chance to look at it one day.
Look at that.
No, the page, yeah, page 3. All right. There. All the news in papers are nothing about sex and rape and killings and violence and like this. These things are thrown on and on and on to each other, making society a sicker and sicker society. Now, how to protect the child from being influenced by the environment is what you plant into the child in the first 3 years. The more love you show the child in those 3 years, the more loving it will become. The more you treat the child with kindness and care, the more loving and caring it will become. And then all that which society throws against it, the child will not be affected like others. Child delinquency, we hear so much of it today. They just never became delinquent because they wanted to. It started off in those first 3 years by uncaring parents. And the basic need of everyone is love. And then when the child grows up, he tries to find that love in some way or the other. The child learns to steal or to smoke, what do you call that? Hashish? Yeah, all that. Because of the peer group. It learns from the peer group. And why does it want to learn from the peer group? Because it wants love from that circle of friends. Okay, that's the basis of it. They want to belong. And the basis of belonging is to find love. So it all starts in the first years. Now, if psychologists, when looking at the sick child, could communicate with the child on that finer level, not the conscious mind, then the psychologist would be in a better position to understand what's wrong with the child. That's good. Let's finish the sentence and pick up. Yes. So parents play a great part in molding it so that the child will not be influenced by society and the doings in the world as they grow up. Now, how can we become better parents? By becoming better meditators and doing it regularly. For spiritual practices produces that love in you, produces that kindness in you. I've seen little babies of meditating parents, and you could recognize those babies a mile away. You could recognize a mile away that, this child comes from meditating parents. That is, I find, about the only solution to make our children, the future generation, the future leaders of the world, into better people by starting with ourselves. Okay. You know, a young man came to me and he says, Guruji, you've given a few thousand talks and you're an experienced speaker. Now I've got a job on tonight. I've got to be an after dinner speaker, and I've never spoken in public, although there are only 12, 15 people that will be at the dinner, but I feel so afraid already now, to get up and say something. I says, look, it's so simple. You just get up and say whatever you like. You do not need to be afraid. But remember one thing, here's a tip for you, that if in the first 10 minutes you don't strike oil, then stop boring. This woman vanished to an office. There was a man there with a white coat. So she says, Doctor, what's wrong with me? Please tell me. So this man looks up and down and he says, you are 50 pounds overweight. Number one. There are 3 things I want to tell you. Number one, you're 50 pounds overweight. Number 2, you must get off all those layers of rouge and lipstick of your face. And number 3, I'm an artist. The doctor's office is down the back. And then, of course, this couple was coming to listen to Guruji. And the lady was upstairs getting ready, and the husband was pacing, and he kept on saying, darling, we're getting late for the lecture. So he shouts back, that haven't I told you half an hour ago that I'll be ready in 2 minutes? And of course, many of you have been in the army. So one day in the parade, the drill, the sergeant says, how many of you are here that loves music? So about 4 or 5 chaps stepped forward. Yes, sir, we love music. He says, well, go to the canteen and shift the piano to the mess hall. Now, here's simple logic, and this happens quite a lot with my wife and me. She says to me, love, would you lend me 20 pounds? But don't give me the 20 pounds now, just give me 10 pounds, because she knows I'm forever broke. All right. Give me 20 pounds, lend me 20 pounds, but just give me 10 pounds now. Yeah. So I give her 10 pounds. So the next day she says, I've been thinking that you had to give me 20, but you gave me 10. That means you owe me 10. And I owe you 10, so we quit. Now, here is a question of simple subtraction. This man says, I earn 80 pounds a week. Fine. Out of that, I've got to pay 20 pounds in taxes. The teacher asked this question to a child, of course. But this, say if your father earned 80 pounds a week, and you have to pay 20 pounds in taxes, 10 pounds in national health, and 10 pounds in insurance, and then from the balance, he keeps half and he gives the other half to your mother. What will she have? So the child says, a heart attack. I'm talking of teachers, what they do. So this school teacher, went across red traffic lights, and she got caught by the traffic policeman, and later she got a summons and had to appear in court. So meanwhile, the judge that was on the bench, he had quite a tough time with these teachers when he was at school. So this lady says, sir, I've got to go back to my classes, so please could you, hurry it up or something like that. So the judge says, oh, so at last I've got a teacher in my court. I've been looking for one. And the first time I've got a teacher in my court. So he says, I won't find you, but you sit down there at that desk and write 500 lines. I shall not cross the red traffic light again. Good. Now, I have a very, very pleasant and pleasurable